People often describe Taehyung as an old soul. But what if I told you that according to his horoscope, he may actually have the youngest soul in BTS? Hello stars, welcome back to my channel where I analyze the horoscopes of your favorite celebrities. Today I'm taking a closer look at the birth chart of BTS member Kim Taehyung, whom you also know by his stage name V. Watch the video until the end because I have a lot of info about his personality. I will also tell you why I consider him the true maknae, the youngest member of BTS, and what his horoscope reveals about the kind of people he is attracted to in relationships. With this video, we have finally analyzed all BTS members. But don't worry, this is definitely not the end of BTS astrology on this channel. In the next videos, we'll dive into the relationship horoscope of some of the fandom's most beloved ships, including Taekook, Jikook, Yoonmin, and Namjin. But today we focus on Kim Taehyung, who was born on the 30th of December 1995 in Daegu, South Korea. One of the first things that immediately caught my attention in this horoscope is his ball pattern. This means that all planets are gathered in only one half of the chart, while the other half remains completely empty. People with this pattern often feel very self-contained, almost like they carry an entire universe inside themselves. This fits Taehyung very well. Many fans describe him as mysterious, hard to read, or emotionally distant at times, while others feel deeply drawn to him, almost as if there is always something more hidden beneath the surface. That is very typical for a bold personality. But there is also a more emotional side to this pattern. Because one half of the chart is empty, these people often subconsciously feel like something is missing. No matter how much success, admiration, or love they receive, there can still be this quiet feeling of being incomplete, as if they are constantly searching for the missing half of themselves. Despite being one of the most famous people in the world, we might always want something more. Not because he is greedy, but because he feels incomplete. He is searching for emotional depth, inspiration, meaning, or a connection that goes beyond fame and success. Another important detail is the first planet in the bold pattern, because this planet shows the energy the person naturally uses to move through life. In Taehyung's case, that planet is the moon in Aries. This gives him emotional intensity, strong instincts, and a very spontaneous inner drive. People with the moon in Aries usually react quickly, follow their feelings immediately, and dislike feeling emotionally restricted. It also adds passion and courage to his personality, giving him the ability to throw himself fully into experiences, emotions, and creative inspiration. Another thing that immediately stands out in Taehyung's horoscope is the extremely strong Earth influence. He has many planets in Earth signs, especially in Capricorn. Earth signs are connected to stability, control, elegance, realism, sensuality, and a strong awareness of the physical world. And honestly, you can feel this energy in his entire presence. There is something very grounded and composed about him. Even when he is standing completely still, he still draws attention. Earth-dominant people often have this magnetic calmness. They do not need to constantly perform in order to be noticed. What makes his chart especially interesting is something called a rolling conjunction in Capricorn. Several planets, Mars, Neptune, Mercury, Uranus, and the asteroid Juno are connected together in a chain. In astrology, this creates a kind of energetic relay effect where all these planets continuously influence one another and intensify the qualities of the sign they are in. And because all of this happens in Capricorn, Taehyung embodies Capricorn energy very strongly. Ambition, self-control, discipline, sophistication, and emotional restraint become deeply woven into his personality and public image. This is also one of the reasons why so many people describe him as an old soul. There is something timeless and mature about the way he carries himself, almost as if he was born with a natural sense of gravity and depth. But interestingly, despite all of this, I personally wouldn't call Taehyung an old soul. Later in this video, I'll explain why I actually see him as the youngest member of BTS. Before we even look at the individual planets, there is something else in Taehyung's chart that immediately stands out. Two of his planets sit at the critical 29th degree. Jupiter in Sagittarius, and Uranus in Capricorn. In astrology, the 29th degree is often called the degree of urgency or mastery. Planets here tend to express themselves in a very intense, visible, and almost extreme way, as if the soul is trying to fully experience and master the energy of that sign. Jupiter in Sagittarius at the 29th degree makes Taehyung's desire for freedom, growth, exploration, and meaning incredibly strong. This placement often appears in people who inspire others on a global scale and naturally attract attention from different cultures and countries. It amplifies charisma, vision, and the ability to emotionally reach large audiences. Uranus in Capricorn at the 29th degree is fascinating because it combines rebellion with control. Uranus wants freedom, originality, and individuality, while Capricorn represents structure, discipline, and public image. This can create someone who appears composed on the outside while internally constantly pushing against limitations and expectations. It also gives him the ability to stand out without even trying. Taehyung's sun in Capricorn reinforces this even more. People with the sun in Capricorn usually have strong self-control, ambition, and emotional discipline. They observe carefully before revealing themselves and often appear mature beyond their age. This placement also explains why V naturally carries himself with dignity and calmness even under enormous pressure. But his sun is directly opposite Black Moon Lilith in Cancer, and this adds another layer entirely. Lilith represents the wild, emotional, and untamed parts of ourselves. In Cancer, Lilith becomes deeply emotional, protective, vulnerable, and emotionally intense. The opposition to his Capricorn sun creates a strong inner conflict between control and emotional exposure. This aspect can make someone feel misunderstood very easily. One side wants composure and emotional restraint, while the other side longs for emotional authenticity and freedom. It can also create the feeling that people constantly project fantasies or assumptions onto them, something that fits Taehyung's public image extremely well. Then we come to his moon in Aries, which gives his emotional world a completely different energy from his Capricorn placements. The moon in Aries makes V feel things immediately and intensely. He is emotionally direct, instinctive, passionate, and reactive. He dislikes emotional stagnation and usually follows his impulses quickly. This placement makes him competitive, adds spontaneity and emotional fire to his otherwise rather calm personality. This moon becomes even more important because, as I mentioned, it's the first planet in the ball pattern. Moreover, it is conjunct the South Node in Aries and opposite the North Node and the asteroid Pallas Athena in Libra. The South Node represents familiar patterns and natural instincts, while the North Node shows the direction of growth in this lifetime. With the South Node in Aries, Taehyung may naturally rely on independence, self-protection, impulsiveness, or handling things alone. But the North Node in Libra pushes him toward balance, emotional cooperation, trust, and deeper connection with others. Pallas Athena adds intelligence, strategy, and creativity to this North Node. It suggests that one of his greatest strengths is his ability to observe social dynamics, aesthetics, and emotional nuance very intelligently. But all of this becomes much more intense because these placements form a T-square with a rolling conjunction in Capricorn. T-squares create inner tension. They often appear in people who feel driven from within, almost as if they can never fully relax emotionally. In Taehyung's case, this pattern creates tension between emotional impulsiveness, the need for connection, and the pressure to maintain control and composure. This may explain why he sometimes appears emotionally contradictory. Warm but distant, expressive but guarded, independent but longing for closeness. Mercury in Capricorn gives him a thoughtful, observant, and careful mind. He tends to think deeply before speaking and often communicates in a calm, controlled, and symbolic way rather than emotionally oversharing. Venus in Aquarius adds individuality and emotional freedom to the way he loves and connects with others. This placement often appears in people who are drawn to unconventional relationships, unique people, and emotional authenticity. They need emotional space and dislike feeling controlled. At the same time, Venus forms a beautiful trine to Chiron in Libra, which creates emotional sensitivity, empathy, and healing energy in relationships. It often appears in people who help others feel emotionally understood simply through their presence. This Mars in Capricorn is one of the strongest Mars placements possible. It gives enormous discipline, persistence, ambition, and work ethic. This placement explains why Taehyung is capable of turning inspiration into actual results instead of remaining only a dreamer. This Saturn in Pisces combines emotional depth and sensitivity with the need for structure and self-control. This placement often creates a lifelong journey of learning how to protect one's emotional energy, build healthy boundaries, and turn imagination, dreams, and spiritual ideas into something real and meaningful. And finally, Pluto in Sagittarius intensifies his desire for truth, meaning, artistic exploration, and transformation. This placement often appears in people who deeply influence the worldview of others, especially across cultures and generations. Later in the video, I will also talk about a small talent triangle involving Uranus and Pluto, because this may explain some of Taehyung's most unusual creative gifts and the almost hypnotic effect he has on people. Quick info break before we continue with one of the most fascinating parts of Taehyung's horoscope. If you enjoy this kind of astrology analysis, I also offer personal birth chart readings. You'll find a link both in the video and in the description below. And now we come to one of the most interesting things in Taehyung's entire horoscope that is also one of the rarest. He has absolutely no retrograde planets in his birth chart. This is very unusual because some planets stay retrograde for months every single year, so most birth charts contain at least one or two retrograde planets. Taehyung has none. In astrology, retrograde planets are connected to introspection, inner processing, unfinished lessons, and karmic patterns carried from the past. People with many retrogrades often feel older, heavier, more reflective, or emotionally complicated from a young age. But Taehyung's chart is exactly the opposite. All his planetary energy flows outward, forward, directly into life. People with an older rect chart often experience the world in a very immediate way. Instead of constantly overthinking, they naturally interact with life head-on. They are curious, action-oriented, spontaneous, and often develop their skills very early. And in karmic astrology, this becomes even more interesting. This is a specialized branch of astrology that interprets your natal chart as a roadmap of your soul's evolution across multiple lifetimes. Retrograde planets play an important role in karmic astrology. Some astrologers believe that having no retrograde planets can indicate a soul that has already processed many karmic lessons in previous incarnations. So in this lifetime, it doesn't carry any weight or unsolved problems from past lives. Let me also add my interpretation. Having no retrograde planets could also mean that this is a new soul. Taehyung is here for the first time. Despite all the Capricorn and Earth sign energy that makes him appear classy, mature, and emotionally composed, there is also something incredibly young about him. Almost childlike. Not childish, but childlike. He reacts to the world with genuine curiosity, fascination, excitement, and wonder, even over very small things. There is something innocent in the way he experiences life, as if he is discovering this world for the first time. I think this is one of the reasons people melt so easily when he looks at them with those huge puppy eyes. There is something emotionally disarming about him because his reactions feel so genuine and unfiltered. If you've watched Run BTS or various competition shows, you've probably noticed how often Taehyung suddenly comes up with strange, unexpected, completely out-of-the-box solutions that nobody else even considered. In my opinion, this connects to the lack of retrogrades. V does not automatically follow the usual path of thinking. His mind approaches situations without preconceived limitations. Instead of repeating learned patterns, he experiments instinctively and creates his own way of doing things. As we all know, Jungkook is the youngest member of BTS. But when it comes to soul energy, I personally see Taehyung as the true maknae of the group. This may explain why he often behaves like the youngest one, occasionally even calling Jungkook Hyung, older brother or older friend. He doesn't say that because he is goofy, but because he really feels like the youngest member. So here we see Taehyung's duality. On the surface, he often appears classy, mature, elegant, and even slightly conservative because of his strong Earth and Capricorn influence. But underneath that calm exterior, there is something incredibly youthful, curious, and emotionally fresh about him. He does not feel like an old soul to me. He feels like a very young one. This chart becomes even more interesting and intense when we look at the asteroids and Lilith placements. Black Moon Lilith in Cancer adds enormous emotional depth and sensitivity to his personality. Lilith represents the untamed and emotionally raw side of a person, and in Cancer this energy becomes deeply protective, vulnerable, and intense. Because Lilith opposes his Sun in Capricorn, there is a constant tension between emotional control and emotional vulnerability. One side of him wants composure and self protection, while another side longs for deep emotional connection and authenticity. Another interesting detail, besides his rolling conjunction in Capricorn that I talked about earlier, he also has a rolling conjunction of asteroids in Scorpio: Cupido, Fortuna, Sappho, Nike, and Vesta. This creates a concentrated Scorpio energy in the chart, adding mystery, sensuality, emotional intensity, artistic depth, devotion, and magnetic charm. It strengthens both his creative aura and the emotional effect he has on other people. At the same time, asteroids Ceres and Hera in Scorpio form supportive aspects to his Capricorn rolling conjunction, helping him channel emotional intensity into creativity, dedication, loyalty, and artistic expression. The Young's chart also contains several rare astrology patterns connected to talent, creativity, and public impact. One of them is a small talent triangle formed by Pluto in Sagittarius, Uranus in Capricorn, and asteroid Amor in Libra. Pluto sits at the peak of this pattern, intensifying everything it touches. In Sagittarius, Pluto gives emotional depth, creative transformation, and the ability to deeply influence other people through ideas, art, or self-expression. Uranus in Capricorn adds originality and unpredictability to his talent. It helps him stand out naturally, often without even trying. And because Uranus is at a critical 29th degree, this uniqueness becomes even more visible and powerful. Asteroid Amor in Libra adds emotional charm, artistic sensitivity, and the ability to create emotional connection through beauty, aesthetics, and relationships with others. Overall, this pattern suggests someone with unusual creative instincts and a very strong emotional effect on people. Another fascinating pattern in his chart is the kite. In astrology, a kite pattern often acts like a channel for talent and destiny, helping a person direct their natural gifts towards something highly visible. The focal point of the Young's kite is asteroid Karma in Leo, and this is extremely symbolic. Leo is connected to performance, creativity, self-expression, and being seen by the world. Karma here can suggest that artistic performance and public recognition are deeply connected to his life path. Karma is opposite Venus in Aquarius, while Venus forms a grand trine with asteroid Psyche in Gemini and Chiron in Libra. Venus represents beauty, art, attraction, and aesthetics. Psyche is connected to the soul and emotional perception, while Chiron adds emotional depth and healing qualities. This creates a very harmonious artistic configuration. It strengthens creativity, emotional expression, visual beauty, artistic intuition, and the ability to emotionally move people through art. It also explains why Taehyung often feels less like a typical idol and more like a living piece of art, someone whose presence alone already creates emotion and atmosphere. One of the rarest patterns and the psychologically very complex one is something called Pandora's box. In the Young's chart, his sun is part of this configuration, making it even more important. Because the sun represents the core identity and the way a person expresses themselves in the world. This pattern is strongly connected to contradiction between the inner self and the outer self. People with Pandora's box often appear composed, confident, or emotionally controlled on the surface, while internally carrying much more complexity, sensitivity, and emotional depth than others realize. And this fits the young very well. Many people describe him as difficult to fully read, sometimes warm and open, other times distant or impossible to decode. This pattern often creates exactly that effect. People constantly feel like there is something more hidden underneath the surface. In Taehyung's case, the box itself is formed by the Sun in Capricorn, asteroid Eros in Aries, asteroid Karma in Leo, and asteroid Cupido in Scorpio. This combination already says a lot. Capricorn brings control and restraint, Eros in Aries brings passion and instinctive intensity. Karma in Leo strongly connects his life path to visibility, performance, and public attention. And Cupido in Scorpio adds emotional magnetism, mystery, and attraction. But the most fascinating part may be the lid of the box, a small talent triangle formed by asteroid Psyche in Gemini, Eros in Aries, and Karma in Leo, with Psyche sitting at the peak. Psyche represents the soul, inner perception, and psychological awareness. In Gemini, it becomes highly observant, curious, intelligent, and mentally flexible. Because Psyche harmoniously connects Eros and Karma, it acts like a hidden bridge inside the pattern. This suggests that beneath all the contradictions and mixed signals, Taehyung possesses a very sophisticated inner world and a deep psychological understanding of people, emotions, and human connection. The Pandora's box pattern often appears in people who unintentionally send mixed signals. They may reveal themselves and hide themselves at the same time. They may want to be understood while simultaneously protecting parts of themselves from the outside world. Especially because the sun itself is involved, this duality becomes part of Taehyung's identity. It is woven into the way people experience him, mysterious yet playful, emotionally warm yet difficult to fully reach, classy yet unconventional, mature yet youthful. The more people try to define him, the more contradictory and fascinating he seems. Many people are especially curious about Taehyung in relationships. But before we talk about this part of his chart, I need to mention something important. Without an exact birth time, it is impossible to give very detailed predictions about marriage, soulmate indicators, or his exact relationship dynamics, like I did in my videos about Jungkook, RM, and Jimin. Still, there are some things we can clearly see from the planets and asteroids themselves. One of the biggest themes is once again the bold pattern that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. People with this pattern often feel that something is missing inside them, almost as if another person could complete a part of their emotional world. This does not only apply to romantic relationships, but also to deep friendships, mentors, or other emotionally important connections. Even though Taehyung can appear very independent and self-contained, his chart suggests that close emotional bonds are extremely important to him. He likely wants someone who truly understands him beyond the public image and who enters his inner world. But this can also create contradictions in relationships. He may deeply crave closeness while simultaneously protecting his independence. He may love intensely but sometimes pull away emotionally when things become too overwhelming or vulnerable. His North Node in Libra reinforces this strongly. In astrology, Libra is connected to partnership, balance, emotional harmony, and learning to build life together with other people. Relationships are therefore not just extra experiences for him. They are part of his personal growth and life path. Based on his planetary positions, Taehyung is attracted to people who are strong, mature, emotionally intelligent, and independent. He likely admires people who know who they are and carry themselves with confidence and elegance. There is also a strong indication that he is drawn to unusual or eccentric people, individuals with their own style, personality, and way of thinking. Someone too conventional or emotionally predictable would probably not hold his attention very long. At the same time, loyalty appears extremely important in his chart. He values honesty, integrity, emotional trust, and long-term stability very deeply. He likely wants a relationship where both people support each other's goals and ambitions instead of becoming emotionally dependent on one another. His chart also suggests attraction to intelligence, humor, creativity, and people who stimulate him mentally. He may especially enjoy people who are slightly different, playful, witty, or unconventional, while still emotionally grounded and reliable underneath. And despite his calm image, there is a surprisingly passionate and emotionally intense side to the way he connects with others. His chart does not suggest superficial feelings at all. When he truly cares about someone, the emotional attachment likely runs very deep. Lilith in Cancer adds another important layer here. Beneath all the composure and elegance, there is a strong emotional sensitivity and desire for emotional safety. He may protect his softer side carefully and only reveal it fully to the people he deeply trusts. Overall, Taehyung's chart suggests someone who seeks both emotional depth and emotional freedom at the same time, which is beautiful but can also make relationships emotionally complex or even challenging. Taehyung's horoscope is full of contradictions, mystery, emotional depth, and rare patterns, and somehow that only makes him even more impossible to forget. Maybe that's the real magic of V. No matter how much we analyze him, there is always something left unexplained. And now I'm curious, do you agree with my interpretation of Taehyung's chart or do you see him differently? And which part of his horoscope surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for being here and don't go too far because very soon I start analyzing the compatibility and relationship dynamics of iconic BTS ships like Taekook, Jikook, Yoonmin and Namjin. Until next time, shine bright like the stars.